Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell, we will be talking about a unusual and unique weather pattern, feature, whatever you want to describe it. We've been already talking about it for the past few episodes, and I'll be describing, kind of going over how it could impact the upcoming month. We know what it did to June, triggered a massive heat wave across the west, torrential rains across the central U.S. Truly a odd and unusual pattern, and that seems to continue to at least a extent into July. It doesn't even have to be a fourth of this intensity that it has been in order to still create a significant impact. As the one that the pattern we just got out of was really an odd one. But before we get into any of this stuff, guys, if you're new, hello and welcome. I'm a hobbyist. I talk about the weather. We have a community of weather-loving people on here. So if you want to be part of that, consider subscribing. Obviously, if you like the channel, not just for some random reason. Check it out first. And if you're a returning viewer, liking the video is awesome. That helps out so much. And obviously, if you leave a comment, I get to pretty much 99% of comments. And I not only read them, but I answer them. So anything down below you want to leave, go ahead and I'll get to them. Unless there's like 1,000 comments, which never happens. All right, let's get into this. So first off, I want to go over a few graphics that I found online. So I think there have been around 100, close to 500 deaths associated directly with that heat wave across the west, and I think that includes southwestern Canada, the northwest U.S., just in general that huge area of heat. So yeah, definitely quite a few folks. When I first read that number, I was a bit shocked that it was that high. So condolences to those that have dealt with those unfortunate passings, but truly, this is something we'll just have to be careful for in the future as more heat is inevitable. Hopefully not to that degree, but I was just reading some of these statistics. Truly insane. I mean, they say that the greatest anomalies that have occurred at this level, last time that happened was during the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. So, very few, if any, viewers can say they went through the Dust Bowl. Maybe a few out there that still are alive, but and the amount that the records were broken by, I mean, that's the really big thing. So notice, for example, Portland broke its long-standing record of 107, and that was on 112, 116. So that's by a huge kind of margin. So definitely not just by 1 or 2 degrees. It was definitely the strongest across the West in modern history. So yeah, definitely not time to undermine that. Notice this is the precipitation. I do want to emphasize. Look at what happened. So notice a huge heat wave here. Obviously, right? Lack of precip. This isn't temperatures, but it really does correlate to where it was the hottest. Notice. Look at that. The belt. I mean, I was in Chicago, so we got in on some of that. We didn't get the worst here in my location, but there was locations that got double-digit amounts of rain. This belt just continued sending plumes of rain, right, one after the other, and here it was just dry, stuck. And notice the Northeast also was in a heat wave. They finally got in on some of that rain because this only goes through July 1st, and it's only been raining there in the past several days. But yeah, definitely a unusual pattern and a deadly one. You can see the graphics from the same website we use, Tropical Tidbits. So I do want to go back now and take a look at these weather anomalies, right? Or these temperature anomalies. And let's just take a glance at, well, let's take a look at the GFS first, and then we'll take a look at the average of all the GFS ensembles. This GFS model only goes out to 276 as it's still processing, but let's take a glance. Notice the unusual pattern that I'm referring to in this video is, first, the cool weather that will be associated for much of the eastern and southern United States, maybe excluding some of the northern states, and then of course the heat that is including much of southern Canada, especially southwestern Canada, the northwestern United States, and just the west. But yeah, definitely an unusual pattern. Usually, if there's heat, it's more focused, or in the past several years, I should say, the heat that has been occurring was more across the Great Plains, the south. This year it's towards the north, the northwest, and towards southwestern Canada, and cooler in areas that typically are usually accustomed to the extreme heat in the last, I would say 4 to 5 years. So definitely unusual in that sense, at least. Notice the cool air definitely seems to get outcompeted by that warm air. We do start seeing some of that warm air start to move in to portions of the Great Lakes, the Northeast, but do notice that again the anomalies are very strong across the west with the heat. They're not as strong across the Midwest. While it's going to be warm and it's going to feel quite a bit warmer as we're going from a cool pattern to warm pattern, The worst of the heat is still out there, and these anomalies are typically dangerous and deadly. But it still pales in comparison to what we saw just a few days ago, where it was literally peaking at 28. It was off the charts anomalies. I mean, this these 28 Celsius wasn't enough to justify it. But notice, look what happens. July 6th, we see some sort of a kind of a fall outbreak of cold air, but in July. And notice that penetrates onto the southern United States. That's actually behind a pretty large storm system that will be bringing some severe weather across the eastern half, which is another thing to talk about. But notice, as we have cool air across the east and the south, a bit warmer across the northeast again, coastal areas. Look at that. The west still sizzling. Now, you won't be seeing 116 again, no new records, it seems, but definitely very warm still. And if you're to take a look at the 2 meter temperature shaded, yeah, look at the Idaho 104, 80, and this doesn't look bad compared to what we saw last week, but that just goes to show you how hot that heat wave was. Notice 69 across Seattle, that's bearable, but then the 80s, the 90s, that's a bit worse, and the 70s across southwestern Canada are definitely on the warmer side. And obviously, the south, it's still warm. You're not going to be in the 40s. A lot of people think when I say cold summer, they think of 60s. It's cold. Everything is relative. If Minneapolis warm summer is 80, then cool maybe 70. If you're 90 in Florida, then maybe 80, right? It's all relative, and that's super, super important because it means a lot, relativity in this case. Notice that heat doesn't stay secluded just to the northwest, and in fact, it kind of leaves it on some days. You can see that's marginal warmth, not too bad, but it definitely affects more of Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, further towards the south. Still cool across the east and the south, impacting. Notice this is now July 9th, July 10th. We're still stuck in that pattern, and we still see these pivoting cool bands of air. There will be pockets of warmth. Notice the Mid-Atlantic, Pennsylvania, right there, on several occasions being rather warm, but notice that cool air expands seemingly out of nowhere, just rotating in one after the other. And it's the same story, and this is the worst side of the story with the heat across the west into Idaho, Montana, Washington, Oregon. Definitely very, very warm and very little precipitation, while the east, where you see those blue colors, it's going to be more rainy. And notice now we are into 11th, the 12th, the 13th. The anomalies grow in terms of the heat, again, to some pretty extreme levels. Very, very concerning again. And then notice across the east, still very, very chilly. Just an extremely stubborn, stuck pattern. Now, this could be bad on many levels. For example, if it's rainy across a certain area, one day after the other, after a week that's rainy, after another week that's rainy, after another week. Obviously, first thing that comes to mind, flooding, river flooding, all of that stuff, not good, right? Soggy soils, you can't harvest anything you want, farmers. But then across the west, that means dry soils. That stuff doesn't even grow. So really, it's not good on either really side. Again, I would say, though, that the latter, the heat is definitely worse, and we've already seen signs of that. Notice this is now the 13th, the 14th, well into the half portion of the month. The heat is still extremely expansive across the northwest, much of southern Canada, though again, further towards the south and east, it's a bit less, though it does look to be a bit warmer than, say, the southern half of the U.S., again, relative to average. And I notice that this is now, as far as this weather model goes, July 16th, and we still see that cool air lingering around. Some of that warm air starting to push into the northern U.S., but the heat continues across very, very similar areas. Let's go back to the previous model one, where it goes out more than 300 hours. Notice there is some change. This previous model showed a bit more cooler air across maybe even Montana, Wyoming, but notice, look at those colors, again, pushing almost off the chart. So again, just a summer filled with extremes. And then notice this is as far as it goes. Maybe finally some warmth across the east and some cool across the west. So patterns starting to break towards the end, I would say the ending half of July. So this pattern that we are stuck in right now is gonna stick around for a while. Now let's take a look at the ensembles, and let's just take a look at the 12Z1s, as that's the one that's fully processed. So this is a bunch of models, I think 30 models combined into one graphical view. Let's just run this through. Notice the 4th, the 5th, cool towards the east. There will be brief periods of warmth. Notice this is into the 6th, the early part of the week. The Great Lakes, the northeast seeing some warmth, the south staying cool. But again, we have that large area of cool air that pivots through, keeps the warm air suppressed to the northwest, and just keeps the pattern going. And this is some pretty remarkable agreement for this being a bunch of ensembles. This isn't just one model. This is 30 models combined. And notice, they all show that push of significant air towards the south, very significant ridging and heat across the east, or sorry, the west. Obviously, a bit more expansive than what the GFS showed, so definitely a concern. But that cooler also definitely visible. And notice that more of southern Canada gets in on that, including southern Saskatchewan, Manitoba, while North Dakota, Minnesota are a bit cooler. So it's kind of weird. Some locations probably could be warmer, even in actual temperature readings across southern Canada than the northern United States, which isn't too uncommon, but definitely something interesting to point out. Notice the ensembles 220 hours out, very, very, very warm across the west, cooler across the eastern half of the U.S. And then notice as this continues further and further out, the heat seems to take an upper hand, but generally still a very similar pattern. And notice how during the night it's actually warmer compared to average. It's really the days that are going to be cooler for the eastern half of the country. And notice this is as far as it goes, and we're still kind of stuck in a pattern, though maybe slightly something starting to break. But at this point, this is very far out, and we'll just have to wait and see whether or not that holds true. Now, so this is the GFS ensembles. Let's just take a quick reading at the European, right? Take a quick look at it and see if it agrees with the GFS and its ensemble members. All right, so same thing, above, below average, right? The blue colors are below, the red colors are above. Notice some of the anomalies are rather extreme. Again, there will be bouts of warmth across the east into early this week, but not before long, as we see this pivoting band of very, very cool air moving to the United States. And again, that keeps the eastern half chillier, though there will be some pockets of warmth. Notice the west, 10, 20, 25 degrees above average in some locations. Definitely not good, and that does intensify on certain days more than others. Again, but notice eastern United States definitely staying a bit cooler. The European may be favoring a bit more warmth. You can see on several days that is right there across the northeast. Definitely not warm, but notice the cool air does persist for a good portion. And this is as far as the European goes, 240 hours, and it pretty much agrees with the GFS and its ensembles. Definitely more pronounced heat towards the west, 17 degrees above average here. It's a bit cooler, though again the anomalies seem to be greater towards the heat side. If you're to take a glance at the actual 2-meter temperature readings, notice that it will still be hot here occasionally across the east. Notice, look at that, July 4th, very, very, very steamy day, 90s across most. The Maine just pretty much being cooler than the rest. And then into the early part of the week, again, very, very hot. But notice we do start seeing those cool temperatures. And yes, it will still be warm for many. It's just tolerable. It could be 90s at this time, but it's 70s across much of the east. And again, very, 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 very hot temperatures across the west. And notice we have hundreds and 90s potentially right there into Seattle, some 70s, 80s, which again is still pretty warm. Notice here, this is considered cooler than average or around average, but definitely a cooler pattern. Look at that, 60s, 70s. Some spots being warmer, some being cooler, but the west again stays predominantly on that warmer side. So yeah, definitely an interesting pattern, and it's remarkable how much agreement there is from all these models. So that's kind of what I wanted to show you. Let's take a glance at the precipitation anomaly, where more rain will be, more dry weather, and notice that where it's cooler, there will be more rain chances. Where it's drier, where it's warmer, it's gonna be drier, and that includes even Florida, which is actually pretty remarkable, as that's a small area that's gonna remain above average in temperatures, and it's gonna also remain drier. So it's remarkable to see the kind of correlation. But notice, yeah, this is kind of a more washed out view, taking average every 5 days. The heat does get a bit more expansive, and the cool air does kind of calm down, but definitely for the next 19 to 20 days, it seems to be the pattern. All right, so now I just want to take a look at the 8 to 14 day outlook, show you what the official weather source thinks. Again, notice, glad to see that it's pretty much all on board, right? Above average towards the northwest and kind of western half of the U.S., and in the southeastern half is cooler. Again, you can see it's a pretty large area. This isn't just a small area of being below average. Likewise with the heat, if you're to include Canada in this, which a climate prediction center doesn't forecast for, but again, this would be all warm. Notice precip wise, again, pretty much lines up where it's cooler, it's wetter, where it's drier, it's warmer. And then in terms of the 6 to 10 day outlook, which is a little bit less further out, 9 through the 13th, It's really the same, and they do have more dense colors as their confidence is higher. But the cool air is a bit more expansive. The heat is a bit less, but it's more extreme. And in the precip, it's really much of the same story. And look, Florida being above average, southern tip, and also drier. So pretty remarkable how the heat correlates to drier and cool correlates to wetter, which usually isn't always the case, even though it may seem intuitive. All right. So yeah, that's basically it. I just wanted to go over it. So stay safe, guys. Stay cool for those folks that are dealing with the heat. Those many folks that are dealing with the heat and drought, and for those folks that are dealing with cool weather, enjoy it, I guess. And if you're seeing flooding, which could be a concern, as many models are showing a very active wet pattern, just stay weary. Stay weather watchful. Don't catch your guard down from severe weather or rain events. Notice this is the latest GFS model run, and you notice that on Tuesday into Monday we could see some large thunderstorms across the northern plains, pretty much daily threat across the south and southwest of rain. This is now Wednesday, Thursday. Notice across the northeast, more in towards the late half of the week, we see a powerful system into early next weekend. Again, pretty powerful thunderstorms, and notice it's just system after system after system. Well, pretty much nothing goes on, unfortunately, across the northwest, but definitely a more rainy pattern continuing kind of across the northeast. But look at that, potentially a little bit of rain right there towards the very end across the northwest, really southwestern Canada, according to this weather model, which would be a good thing. So, but yeah, you can see generally favoring the eastern half. But again, if even a few weather systems were to come through, that would produce a lot of rain, and that's much needed. All right, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next episode. See ya. Bye.